We all set to go, Amy? We're waiting for the Facebook.
Hold on, please.
Yep.
We are having a technical issue with Facebook. Just give me one moment, please.
Sure. Everybody looks real serious.
Now you're all set.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the August 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Municipal Review Committee's Solid Waste Flow Committee meeting. We're going to be discussing the 5-year plan, the DEP's proposed 5-year plan that will take effect in January of 2024. That's according to state statute. That's the policy. Right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 directors on the meeting, and Mike Carroll, our executive director. I'd like to turn it over to Mike if I could, please. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you, everybody, for being here. The Maine DEP is seeking input for updating their next solid waste management and recycling plan for Maine, the plan. The current plan is due to expire at the end of this year. It will be used as a template for preparation of the new 5-year plan that will be made available to the public by DEP in January of 2024. We are meeting today to develop points to provide in writing to the DEP during the comment period related to content to be included in their next 5-year plan. This plan is reviewed and revised in compliance with the state law every 5 years. The most recent waste plan was released in 2019, is available on DEP's website in the Programs tab under the heading Maine Materials Management Plan for Solid Waste and Recycling. This summer, DEP hosted a series of 5 regional stakeholder meetings to discuss topics for the new plan. Now that those stakeholder meetings have taken place and open discussions have happened, it is time to submit comments to assist the DEP in developing what are my words in environmentally friendly but economical plan for the next 5 years. I will admit I was out of the loop for a bit when DEP stakeholders meeting started in early June due to dealing with the sale of Municipal Waste Solutions, MWS. Now that that deal is completed and MRC's new partner, Innovative Resource Recovery, has boots on the ground, I have been able to catch up and pay more attention to this matter. I did attend the DEP's last stakeholders meeting in Portland just a couple of weeks ago, along with a few other board members. After listening to everything and participating in the discussion on different topics, I left with 2 things I heard repeatedly we kept circling back to on several of the various topics. communication, and collection and logistics, which I'm referring to as hub and spokes. Let's start with communication. As part of the waste plan, I recommend MRC act as a liaison with the main DEP team handling the waste plan. I would recommend regularly scheduled meetings to share MRC's data and what we have learned from our members' waste needs and concerns. The state of Maine has 23 cities, 430 towns, 32 plantations, 41 unorganized territories, and 3 Native American reservations. That's just over 500 areas generating waste and recycling. MRC represents and services 23% of that 500 currently today. I also believe, after working closely with MRC's new partner, Innovative Resource Recovery, and seeing all the engineering and amazing things they want to implement at the MWS site with recycling and fuel production, MRC's membership will increase over the next 2 years, and we will I feel we will represent about 50% of Maine cities, towns, plantations, and unorganized territories. Now that the plant is sold, MRC is focusing on getting back to the core of our roots and physically going and meeting with our members face to face. We will meet with the members, officials, and folks in those communities dealing with the waste hands-on. Transfer station operators and public work directors can share their knowledge of what their waste issues have been, also share how they successfully have solved some of those issues. Remember, just before the Hamden plant closed, MRC had paid a vendor to create a survey we were going to distribute to all our MRC members, asking many of the same questions I heard being asked at the waste plan stakeholders meeting. That survey was shared with public work directors and transfer station personnel for their input before it was finalized in 2020. We now are revisiting that survey for revisions and distribution. I recommend it be shared with the folks at DEP for their input and to see if there's anything needed to be added for the data they are seeking. With MRC going to see each member, we can ensure a high level of participation in that survey, even if we have to check the boxes at the time of our visit. Hub and spokes. Hub and spoke is a concept we support and feel we enhance the removal of particular waste items from the waste stream. In brief, hub and spoke is the process defined hub and spoke. Many rural and smaller MRC community members no longer offer some types of collection or drop off of specific materials such as e-waste, plastic, tires, paint, and so on, due to funding, transportation costs, logistics, or in some cases, market value. They can no longer afford to take in these materials. Some communities don't even have the space for the volume needed to be collected to make it economical. Also, with the new EPR bill requiring full participation from municipalities of particular recyclables they have listed, the hub and spoke concept is worth investigating. It may require some funding assistance for transportation for a type of milk run to collect from the smaller rural communities to bring to larger municipalities for vendor collection or to facilities like MWS. Larger municipalities and facilities like MWS have a much easier time with volume, space, and logistic requirements. Utilizing a facility like MWS as a hub and spoke would be a win-win for everybody. Communities that could not meet the EPR requirements now would be able to. Hub and spokes would also allow more opportunities in volume for recycling towards the 50% state required waste reduction. It also keeps hazardous materials such as lithium batteries and paints out of Maine's waste stream. Hazardous materials end up in the waste stream when residents have nowhere to go with them. These materials are horrible for the environment, and even worse, could cause havoc to facilities like MWS, which often result in a facility shutdown in a bypass situation. Solar Solar panel recycling will soon become a problem that hub and spokes could play a big part in resolving. These are some examples of topics that arose in the stakeholders meeting that I feel MRC should be submitting comments on. DEP should be relying on the collaboration with the MRC and in particular MWS facility as one of the hierarchies for municipal waste management. MRC's data and input of what we, the MRC, are seeing and hearing from our members in the waste space would be a valuable tool for them to add to their toolbox while constructing a 5-year plan, and even more valuable for other programs like the Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR. MRC is a nonprofit whose best interest is put forth in the environment and our members' reduce, reuse, and recycling goals. Thank you. I know Melissa had a hard stop at 10 and she had a few things that she wanted to add on the communication piece.
So yeah, I'm really not prepared because my office has been a disaster this morning since 6 o'clock. So I'm just going to go off the cuff and see what I can contribute. You know, my comments have pretty much always been the same. I think that better communication is needed with municipal leaders, legislative representatives, DEP, and any other state agency that could possibly help. You know, when we were trying to restructure the MRC facility, we were seeking help from our legislative representatives and funding from, you know, every type of source that we could kind of find, and we were really unsuccessful. And solid waste disposal is a big issue within the whole entire state. And I just think that communication needs to be better and more transparent. And that's all I can add at this point, and I'm sorry.
Thank you, Melissa.
Mike, if I could.
It's back to you, Tony. I'm all
Oh,
set.
I'm sorry. Yep. I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit to the public comment, but this is along the line of communication. That there's a local group here on Mount Desert Island, the League of Towns, and they've become involved with the process of the preparation of the 5-year plan. And that's an example. I don't recall how many members are in the League of Towns, 8 to 10, but that will definitely help the communication get out and about in general and possibly specifically. Thanks, Mike.
So we have to put comments together to assist the DEP in their plan. And like I said, when I attended these meetings, these are some of the things that I heard. You know, with the area we service, we're very rural. I think there's a lot of needs out there, but I think that we could be very helpful. MRC receives a lot of data. We have to do a lot of reporting for our members. And so one of the things I want to hear from the committee, but this is kind of the direction of what I was going to try to make some of the comments about that there's so many people within the department that work on things like these in the DEP, and I only deal with a couple of them kind of on permitting. So I just want to put it out there. We have this data available. I think that we'd be a good resource on some of these things and just be able to work with them. So looking forward to hear what everybody else thinks needs to be in there, or if that's kind of the direction that they want to go. Karen?
Yeah, I agree with those points that you think we want to cover. I would suggest that in our letter or comments that we kind of characterize it as you know, suggesting that DEP look to regional organizations like the MRC as being able to be the hub that can allow them to get the message out to a broader range of recipients. You know, I think I sort of listened to a little bit of that meeting that you attended, Mike, and you know, I got the sense that they didn't want to talk specifics about particular organizations, right? They didn't want to have like MRC's name out there or something like that. But the concept I think that you're talking about is, you know, us as a conduit, as being this regional entity that has essentially a relationship with so many municipalities and organization, governmental entities in the state. It's very important, very powerful, and they can really use that. They can leverage that, just like EcoMaine is the same way with all of their members, and your League of Cities, Tony, like all of that are ways that they can, help get the message out, improve their communication by using us and relying and seeking information from us and being more partners with us, developing that relationship to be more robust and perhaps even more, structured. Maybe there's a role for all of these sort of regional organizations to come together to talk about these issues. That would be something that DEP could facilitate, rather than leaving it up to us to sort of try to build a relationship with the Southern Maine communities and stuff. And I know we have different issues, Southern Maine waste issues are different from, Northern Maine, but, there is a lot of commonalities, so.
Yes, agreed. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Bob? Oh, you're muted, Bob.
There, can you
There
hear me?
you go.
Thank you. Sorry
Yes.
about that. In going over the 2019 plan, I'm hoping that the new one, 2024 plan, all right, maybe it uses the 2019 plan as a template, but I hope it's a lot different. I have some problems with the 2019 plan. It mirrors competing interests and the related differing approaches to waste management. And the result is the absence of attainable goals and easily understood unifying principles. The plan is ambivalent about the role of technology in recycling and which has been a moving target the past 5 years. Technology has changed tremendously and will change again during the coming 5 years. And the state has failed every single year since 1987 to come close to its 50% goal of recycling. It's ridiculous to have a goal that nobody is apparently willing to seriously discuss meeting. So the plan ought to incorporate realistic goals and maybe some ideals, and two of which are: one, zero waste ought to be incorporated into the plan as an ideal, and it ought to conform to the national recycling policy. And a part of that policy is repurposing. Repurposing is given short shrift in the 2019 plan. I think we really need to talk about repurposing extensively. It's about getting the waste and not just reusing and recycling, but most importantly, repurposing. That's going to probably see the most benefit for all of the communities involved. And I'd like to see an emphasis on that. So those are my comments. I would add, however, that, sorry, Mike, I think you're on the right track as regards the MRC and the potential role it can play. But I think that the 2024 plan needs to be far more incisive about what we're trying to do and what we need to do to move forward.
Thank you, Bob. And I might give you a ring just to make sure I couldn't keep up with you, make sure I got all that down.
Okay.
Melissa?
I just want to touch on, like Bob said, about the technology, because I really did listen to those public hearings that they had regarding this plan. And, I don't want to discourage recycle, reduce, reuse, whatever, but I just don't really think it's a reality. And if we can be innovative, like we are trying to be with the MRC facility, that's a way to reduce the solid waste and to, take care of it environmentally and effectively and cost effective. I like Mike and I had this conversation yesterday. I love and I admire people that reduce and recycle, but it's just not a reality. People aren't going to do it. And we've been through this, and we've taught it in our schools. We've done everything. And now recycling is so expensive, it's not even feasible to possibly do it. And not everybody does it. So part of the waste stream is contaminated. It's just the comment that Bob made about the technology and allowing new technology to come into the state is really, really important. Just kind of going back on when we were trying to get the MRC facility and the hurdles that we came into the permitting process, because it was something different. And, this could be really innovative in changing solid waste throughout the state and the nation. So.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, and building off of that, I think that in general, my one of my criticisms or wishes for DEP is that they would be, in the state as a whole, the legislature and things like that, is they'd be more open to alternative ways of recycling. I feel like there's very much sort of a bias for traditional curbside sorted recycling. I mean, I think they've sort of given in and said, okay, well, single stream, we'll take that because that's still recycling and it gets separated at the plant. But, this idea that traditional recycling is the highest form of recycling. And, the other thing that really annoys me is that composting is, the gold standard of what to do with organics. So they want separation of organics from the waste stream. And I would like our comments to address that and to encourage the plan to acknowledge that what they're looking to do ultimately, I think, is to divert waste from landfills. To me, that seems like that is one of the primary things. Of course, they want people to reduce and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately they're trying to keep waste out of landfills. And there are many ways that can happen. I would like our comments to address cost benefit, that their plan needs to consider that when evaluating alternatives for how to recycle and reduce and reuse, and for us to talk about the value and the importance of transportation costs to our members and to many communities in the state. That feeds in as a significant factor in the economics of it all. And, sort of getting at that issue of like, what's realistic, what is probable, what's likely to happen, and how different areas of the state are going to need to use different techniques and technologies and approaches to maximize their ability to divert from landfill. And that's what we're trying to do in this region to address the needs and the geography and the economics of our communities to, ultimately divert the most we can from landfills and to help our members manage these wastes in the most efficient, environmentally friendly, and economical manner.
Super. Thank you, Karen. Tony?
I sat in on most of the extended producer responsibility meetings. And the topic that kept coming up, Mike, goes back to your hub and spoke, was transportation. And that was discussed at every meeting. I think I made them all, but one, maybe a couple I missed early on. But the transportation and the cost of the transportation, as well as the cost of recycling the materials in general. Those are pretty much the common denominator below the line of topics that were discussed at length.
Thank you, Tony. Kevin?
Yeah, so I think everyone's touched on this, and I just want to reiterate, it's kind of looking at the comments from 2019 and the plan from 2019. It's funny, not funny, but it's to see that the plan that was written, that came out in 2019 was written in 2018, I suppose, right? And then in 2019, it was when the national sword in China occurred, right? So that changed the ultimate direction probably more than it had ever changed in the past. So in my short term in municipal government, around 10 years, I've seen the change in the national sword and the economic piece, the fiscal burden that put on local municipalities was a breaking point, right? So we had practically almost every town, at least that I was aware of, participating in some type of separating of recycling, which was in line with what the state plan was looking at. Then all of a sudden the national sword came down, and we learned that the willingness maybe wasn't there, like Melissa said. People weren't doing it, but we were giving them the program because the cost was acceptable, right? So maybe the participation rate wasn't where we wanted it, but the cost was acceptable. So we were all participating. And then all of a sudden the fiscal burden became too much. And now in 2023, how many towns are recycling? And the reason they're not is probably financial, right? Not willingness. And so what can we do? And the plant is a solution, but what can we do, on a statewide basis and a national basis and a global basis to make things, create a process or a plan so that it isn't so fiscally sensitive. So you already have the willingness, the understanding of the benefit to recycle, but then when the fiscal piece becomes too much, the fiscal burden becomes too much, then the participants shut down, right? And so our plant, our Hamden facility is a solution to that. But sans that, what do other markets do? What are the options available to alleviate such fiscal sensitivity to recycling? And one of the pieces that's been talked about, Melissa, Karen, everybody, is the transportation. So redundant transportation. So you have a program in most rural areas. If you want to have recycling, now you got to have a separate trucking piece. And so that it's not only, you're paying for the recycling tonnage, but then you're paying for the transportation. And so that it seems to me that the willingness is there to play along, but until the dollar amount is too much. And now looking around, and I don't know what the percentages are, or even if it's reported that so few towns are recycling because of that. And obviously, again, our plan at the plant is single stream, and that relieves the redundancy and the sensitivity to the individual municipality, right? And then puts, I guess, the burden on the bottom line of innovative. So it's just looking at looking back 5 years and looking at that plan, they never would have known that straight out in the spring of 2019, everything would have changed, globally in the recycling market. And now looking at what that has resulted in is outstanding, right? And secondly, is there a solution? What do people do with propane torch bottles? It's a little off cuff, but Mike, do you know what the answer to that is?
No.
Because I can't get an answer anywhere for that.
So when we were dealing with them at, believe it or not, when we were dealing with them at the plant, the metal recycler said that they didn't want them unless we drilled a hole in them. And that's just crazy talk to drill a hole into a propane bottle that spark and everything else. So I know a lot of them end up in the metal, but I know the metal recyclers want them either cut or a hole in them, and that's what we were told then when we were getting them.
So maybe we come up with a solution for that, because I know that's a concern. Thirdly, my last statement is more of a question. Since 2019, PFAS has become a hot topic, right? And how does that, and I know there's been a lot of discussion in the news and in regard to sludge. And so what have the discussions been on these stakeholder meetings about sludge in the landfills? Are we impacted by that at all? And certainly has another thing that has changed dramatically since the last plan is wastewater sludge, right? Because of the PFAS concerns. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Kevin. And Aaron, did you have something that you wanted to comment on? Tony, did you have something? You put your hand up.
Yes. I believe Melissa discussed it. The plan we're discussing, Main Materials Management Plan, is called State Solid Waste Management and Recycling Plan 2019 update. Recycling is third from the top on the hierarchy. And the repurposing that Melissa brought up, maybe this hierarchy needs to be looked at a little, and Bob as well, needs to be looked at quite severely and maybe ratchet things around. And Melissa, I think, pointed out, and Kevin, what you pointed out, this was prepared in 18 and then 19, the National Sword came down. But the repurposing, the whole shooting match needs to be given a hard look, not just as it can be used as a template, in very loose terms. But I think the hierarchy needs to be looked at quite severely. And Kevin, I'm sorry, PFAS in the sludge, it's a topic, but and we're addressing it down here on the island. But sometimes it was given lip service at some of the meetings, but basically it's all new. And it's found because technology has increased to the point that now you can find it. The same as artificial sugars can modify your DNA. That's being identified only because the technology allows something like that to be detected. But it is a hot topic, and the EPR meetings, it did come up.
Right. So my thing with the wastewater, and I'm not an expert at all in any means, but I'm wondering how it's changed the dynamics of landfilling, because I kind of got the feeling that it was kind of needed in landfilling wastewater sludge, and now it's being trucked into Canada, right? And so I just wondered if that was a discussion at all within these shareholder meetings, and if we had any, if it affected us at all, which maybe it doesn't.
Aaron?
Yeah, so I mean, interestingly, I guess I don't think actually sludge is considered solid waste. So I mean, I think it's not technically would be covered by this plan. But I think it's a good point, because in my mind, this plan seems to be focused on keeping waste out of landfills. I mean, ultimately, when you're talking about solid waste, I think to me that seems like the concept. And if we have sludge now going to landfills, to me that seems like a relevant issue to be covered in this plan, because it's also taking up capacity, is something that, you know, perhaps some of these organizations like MRC could help address, you know, in working with our communities and ways to manage sludge and, you know, ultimately the PFAS issue in a regional way. So I think that's maybe a point to make, that sludge, you know, maybe it shouldn't be just a solid waste management plan. Maybe it's a landfill management plan, but they don't want to call it that, I'm sure, because they want to include all that other stuff in it. But I don't know. I think that's a good point, Kevin.
Aaron?
So yeah, I would agree on the sludge piece and the whole PFAS issue as it unrolls. I think it's going to become more and more important that is managed and covered under a plan. I mean, even once we put it into the landfill, that leachate is now full of PFAS, and that goes back to the water treatment plant. So you have a cyclical issue there, but yeah, I would agree with you on that. Those propane tanks, Kevin, we just pull the stems in them. we don't drill a hole, we just unscrew the stem and throw them right in our metal recycling. So if we can make that process, educate consumers. I don't know how hard that is to do. I don't know what fitting we bought for our drill, but I think we just put the drill on and zip and pull the little pin out of it or whatever. I think he calls it a Schrader valve, but it's not a typical Schrader valve, so. 100% agree with Karen on the bias towards non-traditional recycling. I went down to that composting school and there were 5 or 6 DEP instructors, and every one of them, you could just see the disgust on their face as soon as I started talking about the MRC and the value we could provide to communities. They just have no support for it whatsoever. And I know this is over on the composting side, so they're likely to be against it anyways because we're not removing organics. But like in the 2019 plan, making biogas and composting was on the same level, having the same value. And I don't know if the new hierarchy has this at the same level or not, but maybe that being more involved will allow us to gain more credibility and stop that bias against us by the DEP. And then the last thing, I love almost everything you said, Bob, because that 19 plan really is inconsistent and lacks specificity, but I don't know that I would be behind endorsing a zero waste goal when we haven't even hit the 50% waste goal. You know what I mean? Let's hit that 50%. And I think this hub and spoke model really is a great way to go, explaining how we can help communities within the distance of our spokes and help them hit that 50%. And then once we've attained that consistently, okay, now it's time for the MRC to step up and say, let's shoot for zero waste. I mean, once we have that under our belt, but we have a ways to go, I think, before we show everybody that we really can do the 50% consistently over time. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Bob? Oh, you're on mute again, Bob.
Sorry. I agree with Aaron that zero waste is kind of pie in the sky, but just put it out there. I do think the plan does need to address, though, the new plan needs to address the role of incineration. I'm not suggesting it doesn't have a role. I am suggesting the role needs to be redefined because incineration is no longer part of the national recycling policy. And I do like the comments that have been made about repurposing. I think that's really where the future is. And I think that Tony said it really well about restructuring that hierarchy so that it conforms more to what, not only what we're doing, but what we realistically can accomplish. So thank you.
Hey, Bob, can you give us some examples of what you think repurposing covers? Or maybe what the national...
I'll give you, one example, making nuggets out of plastic and using those nuggets. Another one is, maybe it's heresy, but pulping is definitely repurposing paper products and using what was recovered from the waste stream and repurposing what was recovering from the waste stream in a completely different form from what it was originally. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. The biogas, renewable natural gas, taking organics and repurposing those organics to a usable, saleable product that you can put into a pipeline and use in a far more environmentally friendly way than natural gas pumped out of the ground is currently being used. Those are just 3 examples of what I'm talking about.
So I'm sorry to jump in, but so like the paper recycling, like they call recycling of paper recycling, but at the plant, we'd be taking paper and making pulp out of it. And that would not be considered recycling. That would be repurposing. I mean, ultimately, that paper is going to go somewhere and the same thing's going to happen to it. It's just going to get trucked to some other state that's gonna, or it used to get trucked, shipped to China, and they would do the same thing and make it into something. So I mean, I totally hear what you're saying, but I mean, this is like, that's the whole point is
It's, you know, at a certain level, it's semantics, but when you get down to the ground level, it's not really semantics at all.
Right.
It's the approach to waste and throwing a can away, expecting that it's going to be reappearing as a can. That's kind of like recycling. Throwing a can that can't be reused as a can, but it could be used in some other way, is repurposing. And I think repurposing is a better, more inclusive term than recycling, because it encompasses the technology that we need to use going forward to handle the waste we have. And it's the technology part of it that repurposing incorporates that recycling doesn't. I think.
Well,
in
and then
most minds.
the other value that we have is that we're doing it all on site. It's not, this stuff is not getting sent away. It's not going to another state. There's value in, the environmental impact of that lack of transportation. I mean, the environmental benefit of not transporting it and the lack of carbon emissions associated with it, that's better than having to ship it to New York to some facility that's going to take your paper or your can or do something with it,
Totally on the same page. Yep.
Tony, did you have something to add?
Yep, and I agree with Karen and Bob. And also, in my opinion, the whole hierarchy needs a revamping, needs a hard look. Maybe even different terms. Thank you.
Kevin?
I agree. I mean, when you're looking at the hierarchy, the first two pieces on there are, the first piece is reduce. Since 2019, what has changed the most in that regard since 2019? We've gone in the opposite direction, right? Because modern habits, conveniences has created an abundance of cardboard, right? Because of the way that we shop now. So instead of going to the store and bringing it home, it's being shipped. And so I think we're going since 2019, I would assume that we're going in the opposite direction as a society globally, and that the amount of waste has increased, not reduced, right? And then the second piece on there is reuse. What is that? We have never talked about that. What is reuse? What are we reusing? And, to Bob's point, I think, is it recycling? It's semantics, right? I mean, is it recycling or repurposing, giving it a second life in some other form, essentially, one way or another. But I mean, what are we reducing? How are we changing habits? What are we doing to encourage that, to reduce, if that's the top of the hierarchy? And what is reuse? Is that defined somehow, somewhere?
So I can speak to a couple of those things, but I agree with you, Kevin. I think we produce a lot more. In my opinion, the reduce was manufacturers have reduced some materials. We produce more, we ship more, but they made more user environmentally friendly, easily recyclable, like packaging material. You don't see a lot of styrofoam anymore on the corners of package and stuff. You see a lot of cardboard. You don't see the plastic straws a lot anymore. You see the paper straws. So I don't think we've reduced waste. I think that manufacturers have reduced unfriendly waste, we'll say, or in some cases. And Karen, my belief is when it came to the reuse, that's where our beneficial use permit came in. That's why we had to have the beneficial use permit. And so if we weren't baling a commodity and selling it as a baled recycled, making it into another product, that's would have to fall under our beneficial use permit when we did things like that, like the pulp or the briquettes, or those type of things. I'm sure it's more technical than that, but my thought was if it's not getting baled and going out on a truck as a commodity, then it fell under the beneficial use permit. Tony?
The regarding the reduction in production of waste, the extended producer responsibility, the EPR, can't be touted as a silver bullet that's going to reduce that packaging. It's voluntary. Municipalities are not required to participate in that. It's voluntary. And it's a very, very complicated program. Right from start to finish. It's going to take some time, one, to write the minutia of implementing the law. They have an ambitious schedule, which is good. The people from DEP working on are working very hard and they're very into it. But it's extremely confusing right from the get-go as to how to do it. And the hub and spoke would come into play there as well. But thank you.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Okay, so I think we have a lot here. Thank God this is recorded, so I can go back to the recording when we put this all together. But no, that was great, and I think there was a lot of great information, and we have a lot to put together. So if that's all on this piece, Tony, we can move on to other business. And when it comes to the waste flow community committee, all I have for other business is I did send letters out to the 4 waste flow communities, just letting them know that those holdbacks from 2022 on the commercial distributions, I will be asking the board, we did have those funds set aside, and I will be asking the board to release those in our October meeting. So those letters did go out to those 4 communities and letting them know what that dollar amount was. Other than that, Tony, that's all I have, unless you have anything else. Oh, you're muted, Tony.
Oh, you just froze, Mike. Oh, no. Or did I freeze you? No, we've got, I think we're all set. I think we do have.
I think Karen has something, Tony.
Sure.
I was just wondering, Mike, you mentioned the survey. And I wondered if you could talk just a little bit about what your plan and maybe the time frame is on that, and what the role of the waste flow committee, or, what the review process is going to be. It's been a long time since that's been circulated around.
So in 2000, so before we knew what was, boy, you put me right on the spot on that one. One of the MRCs, when I started, one of the things the MRC wanted to do and it tasked me with is we wanted to reach out to all our members, and we wanted to see, the plant was just started its commercial operations. It was running, all the waste was going there. So we knew that our members had a lot of other needs, whether it be bulkies, tires, what are they doing, with this item? What are they doing with this item? What can we do to service them better? Who's hauling? Like, is somebody using one hauler that's passing by them empty to come to the plant with another trailer? It was just full of a lot of information that we wanted to gather to see if we could go back and assist our members with all these different things. And it was I was going around seeing all the members. So if we felt if the survey hadn't been filled out, we could sit right down with the transfer station operator or the public works director and check the boxes. So it was data that we wanted to obtain to see what everybody was doing. And is there other things that we could implement on our site to help members with other types of waste? Or is there things that we could learn from other members that they're doing that we could collaborate with, put groups of people together to try to get them volumes or do better things with the waste. So now that the plant is under new ownership and their boots on the ground and doing everything, I think it's important to revisit that survey and get back to what we envision doing with that. And like a lot of you said, technology has changed, things have changed. Transportation has gone through the roof. Some of those folks that are still doing some of the recycling plans like mixed paper and all that, they're paying, it's costing them $50 a ton to try to recycle their paper, do the right thing. Could we, collaborate with all them and get a better deal or those type of things? So we're looking to get that information in. So I feel that we should revisit the survey, look at it. I feel that we should send it back out to our transfer stations. We had a pool of people, we sent it, our public works directors, see if anything needs to be revisited, anything needs to be revised that's become an issue. I think we should share it with the DEP to see if there's any data that they would like to try to obtain that could be added to that. And then just use it as one of our tools and a resource as our mission moving forward. The next 6 weeks are very busy getting ready for the next meeting, and we have 2 shows coming up. But maybe by mid-November we can get everything back and start distributing it again, and maybe look at some of it at our annual meeting. I don't quite know the timeline, but I would like to make something happen within the next couple of months, Karen. Was that helpful?
Yeah, that's great. And my preference would be to make sure it's a good survey and take more time to make sure we're going to get the information back that's important in reaching everybody we want to reach. But yeah, thanks for that overview.
Okay. Bob?
Yeah, Mike, in regards to the survey, I would hope we would actually do it over. Because we have a third party involved who wasn't involved before and brings questions to the table that they may want to have answered by our members. So just put that out there.
I agree. At least we can use it as a boilerplate. Anything else? Okay. Tony, is it okay to move on to public comment?
Oh, yes. You took the words out of my mouth.
So you can comment on Facebook, and Amy, I'm not sure if there's any comments, but Kat Taylor did email in a handful of questions earlier, just before the meeting. So if you don't mind, I'll just quickly, Tony, go down those questions.
Sure.
I think I can provide the answers to them.
Very good. Thank you.
Kat asked, waste diversion, where waste contracted for MRC plant is going now until full operations. So the waste right now, we are bypassing to Crossroads landfill and Juniper Ridge landfill. But for every ton the MRC sends to Juniper Ridge needs to divert the same volume of non-MRC tonnage to Crossroads landfill. So for everything that we put into Juniper Ridge from another customer, usually from Southern Maine, has to put that same amount of tonnage down in Crossroads, because Crossroads has the contract for all of the MRC waste. Incineration or other plans to reduce. So she asked, incineration or other plans to reduce the volume of non-recycled material prior to landfill. Innovatives is working with many engineers and consultants on various aspects and technologies for waste at MWS. Their current focus is on the front end, known as the MRF, and digestion. Once they restart and have things operating, they will better understand what is left as a residual of in the waste stream and the best way for it to be reused or recycled. So it's preliminary right now, but that's currently what's working on. She asked, municipal solid waste split between JRL and Crossroads landfills before and after full operation. Once again, Waste Management currently has the contract under the Crossroads landfill for the MRC waste when it is in bypass, and allows a swap program with JRL. This will continue unless at some point Innovative were to decide they would like to work out or negotiate a different arrangement. She asked, advanced recycling technologies the MRC plans on employing, like we send employing. Like we said, or as we mentioned, Innovative has been fantastic to work with. Seeing all the engineers and technology research being done. They will focus on the two aspects of the plant at the time, making those fully operation and then move to the next phase. Innovative's vision aligns with the MRC for waste reduction, which is one of the many reasons we chose them as a partner. They have spoken of different types of plastic recycling and fuel production. And the last question she asked is the possibility of MRC recycling solar panels, wind turbine blades, and towers, which may contain toxic chemicals and currently destined for landfill. You know, that's going to take a lot of research down the line, but that's where I had mentioned we have been made aware that solar panels are going to start to be recycled here. They're hitting their lifespan, and I think that's where a hub and spoke idea, because something like that, I believe, is going to take up a lot of room, and you're going to need a lot of volume for somebody to come get it. So I'm not sure what will happen with that. Time will tell, but that's where I think the hub and spoke will be a good idea for things like that. So that's all Kat had. Amy, is there any other questions through Facebook?
There are no comments on Facebook currently, no.
Okay, great. Tony?
The questions Kat had, they're all, the answers are all subject to review and participation of the DEP. That correct? We need to involve them in any changes, any implementation of those. Like the solar the solar panels.
That would all be a permitting process, but we're
Right.
Yeah. So no, and I'm sorry, I wouldn't say all when she asked about where our bypass is going, but yes, when she asked about will we get involved, we will just have to see what that looks like, and there's a process for that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we don't unilaterally delve into those areas, but we do have an interest in helping for sure.
Right, like this is a perfect example of something that should be added to the survey. We were in a DEP meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they had mentioned that this is starting to come up. They're starting to see solar panels, and there's not a home for them yet. So this is definitely something that should be added to the survey about, you know, what is your plan if that I show up at your transfer station with a solar panel?
Thank you.
Kevin?
I don't want to hold everybody up because I know we all got to get going, but bulky waste. What's the discussion? Can you update me on Innovative's thoughts at this point? And I know that you were in discussion, I think, with Hamden about potentially, is that the discussion? Transfer station?
Right now they have to, you know, they're just focused on the big thing is getting the plant restarted and open. So of course, the focus has always been on the MRF. They want to get CP's been in there and everything else, which is the front end of the plant. So we're very concerned about bulky waste coming in right away because we know people are probably putting it back in, and there's, you know, mattresses and tires is an unacceptable waste on our agreements. But before opening, letters will go out. I will be back out seeing the communities, and we will see what the volumes are there, and if we can work with other folks in the interim on possibilities of where that can go or how that can be handled. I don't have a great idea or a great plan for it right now, but it is something that definitely is going to have to be revisited, Kevin. And I know with our stuff going to landfill or PERC, that bulky waste was probably put back into the waste stream, which we're going to have to do a big education on that. But it'd be nice to be able to come with a resolution to what to do with that also at the same time.
Yeah, we have, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I mean, we have here in Carmel 2 bulky waste collection days. They were previously curbside and was really convenient. This year we converted to a drop off. And I mean, the amount of volume of bulky waste that came in is just unreal. And Casella did help us with that. And it's just so much volume, you know, with couches, tires are such a major problem and everything. So I'm not saying it should go through, it'd be acceptable waste at any point, but I thought there was a discussion of a transfer station or something there in the end, and that might be able to be a one, you know, keep it all in the same truck and separate it on site and put it somewhere or something like that, but I don't want to get into that and change the direction of our discussion here, so.
Thank you, Mike and Kevin. If there aren't any other questions or comments by the folks in attendance, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Bob Butler. Second,
I will second.
Melissa. I don't even know if we need to make the motions, but all in favor, I think it's unanimous. Thank you, folks, for attending. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Mike.
Thank you.